Hello, welcome to the Jacksonville History Show. I'm Emily Rutherford-Lisk. I'm Executive Director of the Jacksonville Historical Society, and today I have with me Maarten van de Guchte, and he is the Executive Director of the Beaches Historical Society. And I'm going to get that name exactly right before the show's over, but the Historical Society at the Beaches. And it's going to be a lot of fun to talk with him today because we'll talk about a new exhibit at the beach on the 500th anniversary of Juan Ponce de Leon's founding of Florida. We'll also talk about a dugout canoe exhibit, and then we'll talk about HGTV's Home at the Beaches and the association with that grand project and our Beaches History Museum and Center. First, I want to welcome Maarten van de Guchte. Hello, Maarten. How are you?
Hi, Emily. Thank you for having me here.
And you're going to help me with the name. This is a terrible thing for me to butcher. I always called it the Beaches Area Museum and History Center, but it's a little shorter than that these days, correct?
We like to be called the Beaches Museum and History Park.
Okay.
The confusion goes back to 1978 when we were founded as the Beaches Area Historical Society. And that name still exists. That is, one can say, the parent organization, the overarching foundation that supports the Beaches Museum and History Park.
Well, I'm so excited about your new exhibit. It began in April this month, and it's running until June 15th, if I have that correct, on Juan Ponce de Leon. Am I correct?
Absolutely. This is such a major event in Florida, and I would add world history, that it requires and it merits a commemoration.
And it's so exciting to think that this man was an intrepid explorer. He actually sailed with Columbus. A lot of people don't realize that. And he's the one who gets the credit for discovering and naming Florida, because King Ferdinand of Spain gave him the right to go explore in those waters looking for a place to govern. And you have highlighted all those things in your exhibit.
As always, the historical reality is much more complex than that headline.
Yeah.
But certainly, he should be credited by naming La Florida, although we now know that there were Portuguese sailors who had been to Florida 10, perhaps 20 years before 1513. There were actually maps circulating with the landmass of Florida already indicated, back then, before Juan Ponce de Leon set sail from Puerto Rico.
And that's true, and scholars like to tell us regularly that when Ponce landed in Florida, that there were Indians or natives speaking words of Spanish. So we do know that they had those connections and encounters prior to Ponce de Leon. But what we do know is that Ponce was the acknowledged and the sanctioned explorer, and he does indeed get the credit. And as you said, for sure, we can thank him for the beautiful name of the place we live, Florida.
Absolutely, and all kind of interesting facts have come to light. For instance, on that same voyage with Juan Ponce in 1513, we now know that there was a free African among the people on that ship. We even know his name, Juan Garrido, who later went on with Hernán Cortés in the conquest of Mexico. So it was a very interesting, colorful group of people that saw and then later visited Florida.
And historians don't exactly agree on the date, but the date that is widely accepted is April the 2nd of 1513, and therefore that's when it was celebrated, this landing. Actually, all up and down the state, there were at least 3 to 4 landing site celebrations over a 250-mile span. But in your exhibit, and let's go to that, you have a board showing the route of Ponce and where he went, and I'd like you to explain that, if you would, and talk about that.
Well, we indicate in that red line that he left Puerto Rico, and then according to his log, where he visited or saw land. So every stop is indicating the Grand Turk, the East Caicos, going on to Samana Cay, and so on, until he comes close to the Florida coast. Now, we acknowledge being quite skeptical about the claims of him coming as far north as Ponte Vedra. That may have been the case. It's very hard to make that particular claim on solid historical evidence. Has to do with all kind of things like the compass and the astrolabe.
But he did record it as being that far up.
Well, here is that very interesting piece of information that he went as far north as 30 degrees 8 minutes, which should indeed put him, according to current geographical notions, in the vicinity of Ponte Vedra. Yes. However, that's where the debate starts. And as it is the only recording location that he gives us in his log, there is nothing else to compare it with. So it really is a bit of a weak story to base that claim on. But I think that you are totally correct in pointing out it was somewhere along that coast between Ponte Vedra and, let's say, Melbourne, where he must have sighted this landmass, and then which he called La Florida in honor of Easter, La Florida Pascua in Spain.
Now, at this time of the European contact, or that European contact, you have teamed up and shown a portion of the native life in Florida with a wonderful dugout exhibit. And I'd like you to talk about that for a while, and I think you have some images with you related to that.
Absolutely, because we acknowledge, you know, the singular importance of Ponce de Leon. But we are very interested as Floridians and people living in Florida in the people that he met, that encounter. Because that encounter between the old world of Europe, so to speak, and the new world of the Americas is truly fascinating. So what we have to show you is we were given quite recently as a donation a 700-year-old canoe, dugout canoe.
So that's an outright gift to you?
That's an outright gift to us.
At the museum at the beach.
You can see it. It's 12 feet 7 inches long. It was found near Keystone Heights in Clay County, and it's the real thing. That's the authentic dugout canoe made by a Timucua native, used by a Timucua native, and it falls into a very well-established typology of dugout canoes. So here you can see the method of making these. They used to put burning pieces of wood onto the trunk of the felled tree, and then they scraped away the charred remains until a hollow interior becomes evident. The same was done on both extremities. Many, many canoes have been found in Florida, more than in any other state in the US. At this moment, there are approximately 350 canoes recorded by the Florida Museum of Natural History.
And a big find recently, am I correct?
A huge find in 2001 near Newnan's Lake, very close to Gainesville, which is approximately here, where 101 canoes were found, actually, coincidentally, by a high school class on a field trip.
Oh, goodness.
And they alerted the museum authorities. They went there, they took samples, they established chronologies, but none of those 101 canoes were sufficiently well preserved to be put into a museum. Ours is a wonderful hard specimen of pine. That is what most of the Florida dugout canoes were made of. Either pine, or in some instances it was cypress.
So it's largely intact, what you have.
It's entirely intact.
It's very exciting. And that also will be on exhibit until June 15th. And after that, what's the opportunity for the public to see the canoe?
Once that exhibit, that temporary exhibit has finished, the canoe will go into our permanent exhibition gallery in the what we call the Pritchard Gallery at the museum. And then we are going to have additional Timucua artifacts to highlight Timucua culture. On this map, very quickly, here is the state of Florida with that rose-colored area are what people call the Central Highlands. The highest point is Sugarloaf Mountain, not too far from Orlando, 312 feet above sea level.
That's
As a Dutchman,
high
I feel right at home.
So 300
And all those
feet,
big dots indicate where you have more of those finds of dugout canoes in the state.
We are indeed a flat state and sinking all the time, I fear. Or I hope not. We're going to move rapidly to another major project at the Beaches History Museum and Center, and that is, of course, the acquisition and the relocation of the wonderful St. Paul's Chapel.
Historic St. Paul's by the Sea was built 126 years ago in 1887 in Pablo Beach, what is now called Jacksonville Beach. And in its 120-year history, it has been moved 4 times. It moved from 2nd Street South in Jacks Beach to 11th Street North in Jacksonville Beach, was moved around about 90 degrees in its same location. Then in the early 70s was moved to Neptune Beach on Florida Boulevard. And June 17th of last year, it was moved, we hope for the last time, to Pablo Historical Park, the historical park of the Beaches Museum on Beach Boulevard in Jacksonville Beach. It's a magnificent little chapel. I love it. It's what's built in the so-called Carpenter Gothic style, a style that was that became known for its use of local materials, pine and the like, and cedar, and local artisans to put it all together, based on a book by Richard Upjohn, a British architect who was active in this country and published a book called Rural Architecture that was widely used among Episcopalian churches to build their own churches.
Now, very often along the river in Florida, I know that.
Exactly,
and so
exactly, Emily, because this little church, and here you have an older photograph, very small as you can see, with the bell tower in the back. Our little church, St. Paul's by the Sea, was one of a group of 17 so-called river churches, ranging from St. George at Fort George Island, all the way down to places like Fleming Island, Green Cove Springs, Palatka, Welaka, and ultimately Enterprise.
Well, it's just beautiful. You're using it for events, for programs, for weddings.
Well, here is the interesting thing. Today, as we speak, April the 9th, they are putting the sod down, part of the landscaping around the chapel. It has been beautifully restored, all with the help and the funds of donors and volunteers. It's all private money. And in my career, where I have worked mostly with museums in the last 25 years, this is one of those outstanding professional projects that I'm particularly touched by. It is such a wonderful little church. We hope to have weddings there, wedding events. We hope to have religious services. We hope to have community services and lectures and the occasional chamber music concert.
Well, that indeed is a great save for Jacksonville and the Beaches area. We have very little time left, and there's something I must get to, because yet another coup for the Beaches Museum and History Center. You have managed to get, you're terribly involved with the HGTV Smart House that's at the beach. And if people want to find out more about visiting this house, they can go to your website. Tell them what your website is, Maarten.
Our website is simply beachesmuseum.org. Beaches Museum as one word written together, .org, and there you can find a lot more information and ticket information for visits or guided tours to the smart home located in Paradise Key in Jacksonville Beach. We are thrilled to be selected as the charity that will benefit from all the proceeds of the ticket sales.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear that myself. I love to see history organizations
And if I may,
promoted.
the dates are, it will run from Friday, April the 12th, this coming Friday, until and including June 2nd, Sunday, June 2nd.
So people can go online and learn more about that. In the meantime, I must go. I want to thank you, Maarten van de Hoekter, the Executive Director of the Beaches Area Museum and History Center, maybe not getting that quite right, and Park to boot. And I want everyone to stay tuned. We'll be right back with Harry Reagan, and you'll learn about, of course, what else? The always popular Riverside Avondale Preservation Springtime Home Tour. Thanks a lot. Stay with us.